We are what we repeatedly do, but if what we repeatedly do changes, does that change who we are in essence?
How much is the world really to blame when you've got so many spare hours in the day to start working on little things that you can do yourself? And that starts with habits. With regards to my own transformation, I didn't go from being 150 kilos, addicted to drugs, gambling, hanging around bad crowds, coming home all hours of the night, our parents wondering where I was, you wondering where I was. You know, I was literally heading down the path of potentially going to jail or, destroying myself, and thank God I didn't get to that stage.
I think we need to, as a society, as the next generation of young men, we need to raise what it means to be average. So your average standards need to be much higher. You need to be strong. You need to be a leader. For me, the Jacked Philosopher is someone that is a thinker. He's physically excellent, mentally strong, and a thinker.
A lot of bodybuilders are great thinkers. It's beyond the physique. It's embodying the mind of a stoic, being able to have the necessary understanding of oneself and the actualization of who you are as a person, and being able to essentially unlock that self-awareness.
We are what we repeatedly do. That is, of course, according to Aristotle. But if what we repeatedly do changes, does that change who we are in essence? Or is the ability to transform innately ingrained within us? Is mental transformation downstream from physical, or does the mental transformation occur first? My name is Nick, and I'm joined today by my brother, business partner, training partner, dear friend, and co-host of the Jacked Philosopher Podcast, George Varvaresos. George, if what Aristotle said is true, and we are indeed what we repeatedly do, then who is George Varvaresos? Because what you used to repeatedly do vastly differs from what you repeatedly do now. So take us through a bit of background of yourself and us, what we're all about, and how this Aristotelian idea kind of resonates with you.
Well, a lot to unpack there, Nick, off the bat. First of all, it's a pleasure to be able to do this podcast with you. I think you can agree that any idea that we've had to do together, we have done together, which is really good. And it's something that I think is definitely lacking in modern day society. That brotherhood that me and you have is something that I'm extremely grateful for. So regarding what we repeatedly do, I think, it's a very wise saying that has translated into a lot of the modern sayings that have stemmed from it. So when we look at examples as, you are a product of your environment, things like that, I think they all stem back from these ancient philosophies, Aristotle, Marcus Aurelius, all these famous sayings. And for me personally, I'm a lot different now than I used to be. I definitely had my struggles in the past, and I still have my struggles because I think struggles are a necessary part of life. But in terms of the change that has occurred from who I used to be and the things that I used to repeatedly do that shaped the identity that I associated myself with back then are vastly different than what they are now. And a lot of that has to do with your environment. It has to do with the people you surround yourself with and the daily things that you essentially do, the tasks that you set yourself, the habits that you create, that will determine the ultimate man that you will become. And that's what has been the biggest change for me, being the person who I was as opposed to the person that I am now. So I used to have some very destructive habits. I used to be involved in a lot of things that would, otherwise destroy me, led me down the path of destruction, things that we will get onto, a little bit later on in the podcast. But the essence of change, the importance of understanding and being able to actually create that concept of self-awareness within yourself is the most significant thing that will actually determine whether you are going to create that change or not. Whether it's for the positive or the negative, it's the essence of having that self-awareness.
So do you think that the habits create the man?
Yes, I think that having good habits plays a major role, or having any sort of habit, because you can have either good habits or you can have bad habits. But the whole idea behind habits, which is why as a coach as well, it's something that I'm so big on instilling, in our clients, is that it's these little things that we set ourselves up with, these daily boxes that we need to check that are going to accumulate over time that are actually going to create this new version of yourself, this person, that you become once you repeatedly do all these things.
Yep.
So I think that's what Aristotle meant when he said we are what we repeatedly do. If you're repeatedly doing things that are going to be a detriment to your health, a detriment to your well-being, then that is essentially who you will become. Destructive behaviors, destructive habit patterns, whatever it is that you may be involved in. And that is definitely the person that I used to be.
And I found for myself, because obviously we've been on this journey together and we kind of push ourselves and grab it, like dig ourselves out of the hole that we've put ourselves in. And I found that for me, it was the mental transformation that was as a result of the physical one. So obviously you need to make that decision in your head that you want to change. But I found that my outlook on life changed once I started taking care of my body, once I started actually caring about my strength, my fitness, what I was eating, things like that. So tell us a little bit about like what the podcast is about. It's a new concept and we're very excited. What are we going to be sort of speaking about and what's the point of it?
Well, essentially, Nick, I think what has brought us both here is we've come to the realization of where modern masculinity has reached. I don't think it's going forward the way that we would hoped it would go. At least our ancestors wouldn't look at it that way. Mm-hmm. The generational difference between their outlook on life and wisdom in general has vastly changed. We can see that a lot of people in our generation, they can't even hold conversations together, right?
No, they can't.
I find it a very hard time to connect with a lot of people our age, have conversations on a bit of a deeper level, explore topics that essentially require a level of intellect to explore and a level of understanding beyond the surface level. And I think having a platform where we can actually use fitness as a basis and embodying, what makes that man, that leader, which we all hope to be, having that as a platform and using fitness as a discipline to then embody the other characteristics of what we believe to be, a true stoic man, I think is a perfect opportunity that we can be able to relate to those people in our generation who may be struggling with these things, because as you just brought up before, the transformation, although it is mental, it does start from the physical. And that's something that even Chris Williamson will bring up in his podcasts. I think that starting with the body is the easiest thing to change, because not only does it teach you the art of delayed gratification, but it also shows you that you need to keep showing up day in, day out, even though you won't see results straight away. And it's those little lessons that you learn on the way. It's the things that you repeatedly do on a daily basis, which will end up shaping you to be the human being that you are to become. And that is a very long and tedious process, and we are still going through that journey. Yes, we have made, both me and you have made very significant improvements compared to where we were. But I think that being able to solely focus on what actually transforming your body physically can do for the mental psyche, can do for your well-being, for your careers, the opportunity to get into business, things like that. I would have never seen us a few years ago in the state that we were, starting a podcast together. If anyone had told me, you two are going to both be bodybuilders, compete on a bodybuilding stage, start a podcast, start a business together, 5 years ago I would have laughed in their faces, and I'm sure you were the same.
Oh, yeah, I'm exactly the same, yeah.
That's right. So the thing that's given that to us, though, to be able to actually start to explore these topics and to even be confident enough to bring this to a platform now where we can try and help other men, whether it's in our generation or not, even older men, bodybuilding and fitness and just embodying those characteristics of what it is to be physically fit, to look after yourself, that it's given us that. Without that, it wouldn't have existed. And just before we move on, Nick, I wanted to actually touch on something, because we spoke about pivotal moments with us that made us actually make that connection between, okay, is there a significant moment that made me realize I needed to change? I needed to become a different version of I am what I repeatedly do. And this isn't something that we've spoken about publicly in the past, but me and you had this conversation off camera recently. And when we talk about destructive habits, when we talk about the issue of self-awareness, I want to bring us back to the holiday that we had a few years ago up in Queensland.
Yeah.
This episode of the Jacked Philosopher is brought to you by Metamorphysique. Our coaching and mentorship program is for men ready to transform their body, mindset, and life. We know what it feels like to be stuck, overweight, unmotivated, and undisciplined, because that's where we started. And that's why we created a program that goes beyond training plans and diets. We rebuild daily structure, discipline, and the confidence that comes from building a physique that you're proud of. So if you're ready to stop wasting time and finally take control, head to metamorphysique.com or DM us on Instagram at George_metamorph or Nick_metamorph. Transform your body to transform your life. Do you remember what happened on that holiday?
I do. So we were up in Noosa and family holiday, and we got into a bit of an argument. A bit of an argument turned into a bit more of an argument, and then we got into it a bit. I got my my ass handed to me. We'll say it that way, and but it was the pivotal moment came after the fight. So we got to a pretty bad point, right? Like you.
Well, look, if I'm going to be completely honest, I caused you physical harm, which I'm not proud of. And that is something that, as brothers, we shouldn't do, considering especially how close we are as well. And I also think as a result of that physical altercation, that was probably the first time I had ever sincerely apologized to you as well.
Yes, and I noticed that in the way you were talking and in the conversation that we had after. But so we see these days where when people have an altercation, be it physical or not, they'll kind of hold that grudge and they'll continue to kind of disregard that person and they don't want anything to do with them. In my head, the way that I think, you're my brother, obviously, and I know that our relationship goes beyond surface level. And I was thinking about this the other day, where had I reacted differently in that situation, then I wouldn't have a training partner, I wouldn't have a business partner, I wouldn't have someone that I can talk to on this deeper level. So for me, I guess I've learnt to kind of prioritize based on what I believe is important. And what I think happens day to day isn't as important, like little arguments and things like that. I don't think that's as important as the potential that our relationship can have and where we can take this. So for me, yes, it was a difficult time, but I did see that you sincerely apologized to me, and that's, I guess, what kind of made me realize, okay, he thinks along the lines that I do, where it's like, yeah, that's happened. We'll emotionally detach from that. It is what it is. Let's move on and let's build something.
It's not just that. I think it's also the fact that we both realised that, given the household that we grew up in and the values and morals that we were taught by mum and dad, growing up in a Greek Orthodox household where forgiveness and love is something that is so much preached in our faith, which, is a massive reason why we were able to essentially, more you forgive me, but it was the reason why we were able to get past something like that. But it was also the self-awareness aspect that I had realized, okay, I have just actually physically harmed my brother. What has caused me to do this? Why have I been brought to a point where my own struggles, my own destructive habits that I had up until this point has led to me now actually inflicting pain on my own family? And I think that's what it took for me to realize, okay, George, you have a problem within yourself that needs to be seriously addressed. And taking it out on, immediate members of your family, okay, this is a problem now. A lot of people, unfortunately, they still aren't able to make that connection. They'll still play the victim card, or they'll find an external factor to blame.
Exactly. I was just about to say that was the moment where you started taking accountability.
Correct.
And that is what is lacking in society these days, both men and women, but especially men these days. They do not take accountability for the situation that they're in.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's been a conditioning over time. I think ease of access to everything, instant gratification everywhere you go, the instant dopamine hit. I think that is what is causing people to lose ambition. And I believe that the average person has lost ambition. And I think that conditioning has caused people to put up barriers and put boundaries on what they're capable of. They have a ceiling that they've set themselves. I think it is as a result of not being able to break free of the environment that they're in a bubble in. So I think people, because of all the comfort and mediocrity being rewarded in society, I think that is the most detrimental aspect of society for your average person. And your average person is just, these days, is your fat, overweight, dad, I guess. Sometimes the birth rates are declining, so it's not even going to be a dad anymore. Working your 9 to 5 and then spending the rest of the time either scrolling, watching pornography, just consuming in general. And I think that is the most dangerous thing. And if we keep heading in that direction, it's going to be very, very difficult for us to break out and for your average man to achieve anything. And I think we need to, as a society, as the next generation of young men, we need to raise what it means to be average. So your average standards need to be much higher. You need to be strong. You need to be a leader. You need to not stand for all these things that are happening in society where, the powers that be have ultimate control over us. So I think that's what's most important. And I think that all these things stem from a physical transformation, because that is the one thing that is definitely 100% within your control. Your body and your mind are the only things that you own. So one thing that's 100% within your control is how strong you are if you train and how much food you put in your mouth and what kinds of foods you put in your mouth. So it's not the easiest thing to transform your body, but it is the most honest, and it is the starting point for a transformation of your mind. And if more people embarked on that journey, then the world would be a much better place than it is today.
Which brings us on to a famous quote by Epictetus. No man is free. Epictetus. No man is free who is not a master of himself. And I think that quote perfectly interlinks with exactly what is going on in modern day society. It's as if mankind has enslaved itself. And as you said, we have confined ourselves within a certain ceiling. Now, whether that has been orchestrated or not by the powers that be, again, this is a rabbit hole that we can choose to go down.
Look, whether it is or isn't, the result is the same.
That's right. I think that, as you correctly said, the standard for mankind, masculinity, leadership needs to be raised. And I mean, look, you can see it. It's evident in social media, right? Like, we've been enslaved by our own devices. We've been enslaved by how much time we spend scrolling. Now, obviously, we understand that, yes, social media is a tool. We use it for business. We are on it, multiple hours a day posting and doing the things that we need to do in order to try and get ourselves ahead. But at the same time, it's an instant dopamine hit, just like you see with every other instant gratification dopamine signaling thing. Whether it's gambling, whether it's drugs, we see that the rate of gambling has increased in modern day society. No one's got money, yet they're still gambling. No one's got money, yet they're still drinking. All these things that are associated with these instant dopamine hits, it's to serve, the purpose to essentially get rid of a feeling. It's trying to numb a certain feeling, numb a certain event that someone might be going through. But in reality, you're masking the real problem, which is what we said before. It's unlocking that level of self-awareness in your subconscious to realize, okay, there is an issue here with myself that I need to address, and I need to stop blaming external factors and outside events or things that are not in my control. Because whether we like it or not, the things that aren't in our control is, as I said, who the government of the day is in power, who, what decisions are going to be made. Even though we might say that it's a democracy, at the end of the day, whatever decisions are going to be implemented regardless, right? The weather we can't control. Yet how often do we see when the weather turns to shit, everyone is depressed,
Yep.
right? Yet it is something that is outside of our control. we see all these excuses start to stem from the various things that people complain about. You know, oh, I don't make enough money. I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to go to the gym. All these things we end up becoming the victim of, and then we refuse to actually sit down and do anything about it, which is probably the biggest problem that we have in modern day society. And I think it's the biggest thing that needs addressing, and that starts from what you can immediately fix that's in front of you. And that's the man that you're looking at in the mirror. It's free. You choose how much time you get to spend on yourself. Like I said, this is something that I tell my clients as well. There are 24 hours in a day. We sleep for 8 and we work for 8, right? How many hours are left over?
Another 8. A full working day left.
So what are we doing with those extra 8 hours if we're not working on ourselves? We're the dopamine seeking.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, we're either working on ourselves, trying to build a new business, trying to learn a new skill, or you can be doing the things that we said are going to lead to destructive habits. We are what we repeatedly do. So if we're consistently spending those 8 hours a day, I think it's about 160 hours a week, whatever it is total, right? And we are doing absolutely nothing with them, and then we are blaming the world for the problems that we are served with. We are blaming the world for the current state of the economic crisis, or, the fact that we're not happy with our career progression, whatever the case may be. Well, how much is the world really to blame when you've got so many spare hours in the day to start working on little things that you can do yourself? And that starts with habits. It doesn't have to be going from 0 to 100 overnight. And this is something that I want to stress with regards to my own transformation. I didn't go from being 150 kilos, addicted to drugs, gambling, hanging around bad crowds, coming home all hours of the night, our parents wondering where I was, you wondering where I was. I was literally heading down the path of potentially going to jail or, destroying myself. And thank God I didn't get to that stage. But I didn't go from there to where I am sitting here today overnight. And I think that's what people need to actually realize. It takes a very long time to be able to build these little habits. And you have to start by doing something that you can yourself commit to that same day. So for me, as a result of our conversation leading back to that altercation we had up in Noosa when we were on holidays, me and you made a pact. We said to each other,
We did.
Nick, we are going to start working on our bodies. We are going to fix ourselves, and we are going to truly find meaning, because that's what it stems down to. What is the meaning of life? Who am I meant to be as a man? What identity am I trying to associate myself with? And I think that's what is so confused in modern day society, because I genuinely believe that identity is trying to be stripped away from the man.
Exactly. And I think if you ask most people, who are you? So if I ask you, who is George Varvaresos, you can probably answer it because you've thought about it. Whereas if you ask your average person, who are you? They won't be able to tell you who they are without giving you all their environmental factors or their external factors that make them who they are. So most people would answer, oh, I work here, I do this, I play a sport, I've got a family. Yeah, but who are you in essence? Like, what actually are you? Like, what are you about? What does your spirit feel? What makes you tick?
I think to add to that as well, this is just something that just came to me now. That's a big reason why people struggle in job interviews as well. You'll notice that a lot of job interviews nowadays, they'll ask you that question. Who are you? What do you bring to the table? And they'll follow off a standard script, right? Oh, I have experience in X, Y, and Z. I know how to use, I'm proficient in Microsoft Word, Excel. Yeah, but who are you?
Exactly.
Who is Nicholas Varvaresos?
What do you stand for?
What do
are
you
your
stand
values?
for? What are you... Correct.
Yeah.
That's right. And when people are stumped by that, that's when you realize, okay, this is a problem.
Yeah.
If I don't have an identity associated with who I am, then what is the point? What is the point of life? And I think that's where people can so easily fall into depression, right? Because they are genuinely confused about where they stand in life and what their true purpose is, because they haven't searched for it. And I think that search, it starts with challenging yourself. You need to genuinely challenge yourself. And as we said before, I think that starts in the physical realm.
Yep.
You need to learn to show up. You need to learn to figure out how to be a master of your body. And that way it'll translate into you being able to master your mind.
So why did you embark on that journey? Because you weren't thinking like that back in Noosa, right?
No.
You were 150 kilos, dangerously obese. Like, you were strong. That's commendable. You were training and you were strong. You had stopped training for a little bit. But why did you embark on the journey? So it seems to me from obviously I know you, so I've got the insider perspective, but from the external perspective, it seems like you went from one extreme to another. So why did you pursue bodybuilding? And I guess how has that changed how you think, how you do things, and how you're able to get things done? Because I've noticed back a few years ago when you were obese, you would say you were going to do something and you never did it. Nothing ever got done. Whereas now, it's like, okay, we're doing this. What do we need to do to get there? And you're a lot more driven now. So was that always within you, or was that as a result of embarking on the journey and making that transformation? And why embark on the journey? Like, it's easy being fat. It's easy being lazy. So why did you challenge yourself on purpose?
It's a good question. There's a lot to unpack there. I still ask myself the same question as to why I chose bodybuilding specifically, because it is something that is quite extreme. And I obviously have gone full ham with it because I'm extremely passionate about it. But it didn't always start like that. For me, the biggest thing was actually establishing a form of structure in my life, which I never had. So one of the horrible habits that I used to have back when I was severely obese was I had zero self-control when it came to my food intake. If you remember when we were younger, I used to have packets of lollies and empty popcorn wrappers and chips, and I used to actually shove them down the side of my bed.
Yeah, I remember.
And it would pile up to the point where, it would look like a scene out of My 1,000-Pound Life, like one of those American TV shows. That's how bad it got. During COVID, I was eating like a pig. I was taking drugs. I was essentially blaming the world for my situation. Anyway, the point is, I came to the realization that if I didn't have some sort of structure in my life, I would destroy myself. And I think although most people believe they have structure, they don't know what true structure is because they don't stay consistent enough in something to actually turn it into a habit, which is then going to become repetitive over time. That's why you see all these successful entrepreneurs and whatnot. And again, I'm not one of those people that has this extravagant morning routine, sit there, put my face in a bloody ice bath and, do all these fancy things with moisturizing creams and write down my affirmations. I think a lot of that is marketing and it's bullshit. But in saying that, if people are happy doing that as part of their morning routine and it's something that they can stick to and it helps them set up their day, absolutely go for it. Whatever that may look like. But you need to be doing that every single day. The problem is that I see now in modern society is people say they're going to embark on a journey or they're going to start something. They'll try and incorporate a million different things that they've seen other people do on social media, people that have been actually practicing this craft that they've excelled at for a number of years. They'll try and incorporate that all at once into a morning routine. They'll do it for 1 or 2 days. They'll wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning for 1 or 2 days. And then they'll realize, I hate this. I don't like it. I'm not going to stick to this long term. So I realized for me, I couldn't start like that. I had to just figure out something that I could do immediately that would then help me turn that into a consistent habit that I could do every day. So for me, that looked like, first of all, stop taking the bloody drugs that I was taking.
Yeah, that's a good start.
It was, and look, I couldn't stop cold turkey straight away because I do have a very addictive personality. I've brought this up on another podcast as well. I used to be a chain smoker, and for me, I knew that the most destructive habit that I currently had at that time was the addiction to the drugs that I was on, as well as the food addiction that I had. I had an extremely poor relationship with food. And I guess, if you look at bodybuilding, you say, yeah, well, that's most bodybuilders when you break it down to the crux. But
I mean, we are all fat kids at heart. Let's be honest.
I'm a big eater. Look, it's good. For bodybuilding, it's good and bad. It just means during prep I starve, but during the off-season I can eat more than most so I can put on the necessary tissue that's needed. But going back to the habits, yeah, figuring out what I could stop immediately or cut down on immediately, which would both save me money as well, because let's not forget, recreational drugs aren't cheap. I couldn't afford it. I was borrowing money. I was selling. There were a lot of things that were going on back then, which were literally in place just to fund my drug habit. So I knew straight away that was something I had to essentially stop. And again, I came to that realization one night when I was on a boatload of stimulants, all sorts of recreational drugs. And again, this is something that I had brought up on another podcast. I had an epiphany that night. I literally had an epiphany. I looked up at the icon of Jesus Christ in my room and I felt it talk to me. I felt something in my subconscious say, it's all right, George. I've got you. Just have faith. And it still raises the skin on my hair when I say that, because this isn't me saying, yeah, you were on so many stimulants, it was a psychoactive vision. So no, it wasn't. It was because after that day, I stopped. I stopped. There were a couple of instances later on where, yes, I was at an occasional party and I might have dabbled in a couple of stimulants and whatnot. But essentially, I made an agreement with myself that day. I made a pact with myself and with God. And I said, that's it. I'm sick of it. I've had enough, because I was looking at my relationship with you. I hadn't seen you or done anything with you in a very long time, right? And you're the one person that's always been there for me since the beginning. I hadn't seen my family. I hadn't seen my friends. I had distanced myself from the church. I had distanced myself from everything that I knew was bringing good to my life, right? Just for that instant gratification, that instant dopamine hit. So that was the first step, starting off by cutting that off. And then I realized, okay, awesome. I've turned that into a habit now, right? I've consistently been off the drugs for X amount of time. Now, Nick, the thing that we had agreed on, right? Making ourselves better as people, getting ourselves back into the gym, fixing our bodies. That's another habit that we can start from there. So that was the second thing. And I realized once you start compounding these little habits one on top of another, they become easier to habit stack. And this is something that my own coach as well in bodybuilding says as well. It's all about habit stacking. Once you have, you get your ducks in a line, it's much easier to add things on top of that. It's the same thing when it comes to organizational structures. It's the same thing when it comes to scheduling. You look at us and how far we've come even in the business so far, right? Not that we're, excelling yet, but we've definitely made some, pretty big jumps compared to where we were. We weren't posting content 2 years ago. We would struggle to come up with one post, for a fitness rule or whatnot. And now we've got into the stage where, we're both working full-time jobs. I'm also, got my clients on board as well. You've got your clients as well. We're doing a podcast. And on top of that as well, we're still finding time to make content. And I've started a YouTube channel on top of that as well. Again, that's not something that just sprouted overnight.
Well, and your training, don't forget about it. You're in prep.
Yeah, and I'm in prep as well. I'm 4 weeks out from a show. So, it's not something that sprouted overnight. It's taken many, many years of developing these little 1% habits that have allowed me to then fit more in my day, because I can better schedule my day, allocate different time slots where I say, okay, from this point to this point, I'm doing client check-ins. From this point to this point, I'm at the gym. I'm cooking my food. I'm doing my meal prep, whatever it might be. But that's all as a result of me building that discipline of those habits that have not stopped. Like Nick, I have not missed one day of not doing 10,000 steps. Okay. Yeah. Every single day it's a non-negotiable. That's why I wear the same watch with me everywhere. Even this morning, we knew we had this podcast at, 8 o'clock in the morning. So I got up at 6 o'clock in the morning, did my steps. It's about how you organize and you structure your day. So when people come to me with an excuse to say, today the weather was bad, I didn't have time to go and do my steps, even though I've said to myself, I'm going to go do my steps. Okay, what are the ways that you can work around it? Okay, just because you can't do them outside, it doesn't mean you can't go and do them. Go to the gym, buy yourself a walking pad. You can get one for $200. So again, it comes down to how much do you really want something? And I was at a point in my life where I knew I really wanted to change. I didn't really want to become a bodybuilder, but I really wanted to change. That's what was necessary. And that's what I think most people struggle with now, because they say they want to change. They say they want to achieve X, but deep down, because they haven't actually given themselves a future identity of what they want to look like, because they don't know who that person is, that's what stops them from actually making that jump and saying, okay, well, these are the things that I need to put in place in order to become that person. Whereas I knew the person that I wanted to become. It wasn't George the bodybuilder. It was George the better man, George the person who loves his family and can have a good relationship with him. George, the potential good future husband for whoever's going to, come into his life. And the father as well. And obviously the thinker. So that's what I think was the biggest thing.
Now, I don't want to speak for you, but I found in my experience and through our lived experience together, we didn't necessarily have that much adversity. We were very, very lucky growing up. And we were very, very comfortable and content in our upbringing. And it's fantastic, and I wish that for everyone. But I found that having not experienced any sort of adversity growing up, we sort of needed to create our own adversity in order to actually overcome a challenge and actually become a better person. So when I started training, I didn't really do it to become all philosophical and all that. And in reality, like, I went to uni and studied philosophy, but I found that all the theory that I learned in uni, it wasn't applicable in practice in my life until I started putting myself through challenges, until I decided, okay, I want to do a bodybuilding prep, I want to coach myself, I want to see how far I can push my body. And it was in that moment when I was about 4 weeks out, starving, felt like absolute shit. I couldn't move. I couldn't even press my clutch in my car. It was every movement, I could feel the calories burning.
I know that feeling.
Oh, yeah, you're right there now. But in those moments, that's where I learned to be stoic. Because I would wake up and say, I don't want to do my steps today. I don't want to go for a 2-hour walk. What am I doing this for? I'm comfortable in bed. I was freezing as well. It was middle of winter.
Yep.
So I think putting myself through that made me want more out of myself.
Yep.
It's like building mental fortitude requires a challenge to be there. It requires a hurdle to overcome. And we didn't have that before. So we created that hurdle within ourselves. We said, okay, we're going to do this. And we have kept each other accountable. You have kept me accountable in more ways than one. And I'm very grateful for it. But without that struggle there, we're just conditioned to be comfortable and to remain comfortable and to remain the same. So being forced to confront yourself, that's where you learn. That's where you become sort of a different person. That's where you transform your mind. And I found that the gym is sort of like the microcosm for philosophies where I see training as a modern stoic practice, because you have to detach yourself emotionally. You have to look at the data, and going off the data, that's how you make the decisions.
It's essentially choosing your hard.
Yes.
Which is something that Jerome Simpson has said in the past. Someone I want to bring on the podcast, by the way, if you're listening to this, Jerome. But yeah, that's essentially what it is. It's choosing your hard. And if you think about it, back in the ancient times with the Stoics, if you ever want to go further back, like, you talk about the Spartans, you talk about all the ancient warriors that fought these great big battles, they didn't get to choose their hard. No, it's if you were born a healthy baby, once they sized you up, you were either tossed over a cliff or you were literally taken straight to, to
become a warrior.
To become a warrior. You were trained to be a gladiator. You did not get a choice.
And that's what's lacking in society today.
That's correct. Now, I'm not saying that we need to put people back in that same position by any means, but what that develops, the challenge of you going through a particular adversity, or in modern day society where we still have the option of putting ourselves through a challenge or an adversity, that's what ultimately will be the difference. And it's shown in the data too, right? Like, you look at the 300 Spartans, they conquered, they fought off an entire army for how long before they got destroyed? You look at the Trojans, you look at all the famous wars that have been fought with so little men. The way that these men were actually trained, the adversities that they went through, the battles that they endured, if they hadn't gone through that training, both mental and physical, we wouldn't be where we are today, right? Now there's no need for that because we've created such a comfortable society, as we've said, where essentially, there is no need for you to put yourself through any struggle. I go on Amazon Prime, I buy something, it'll come the next day, or that same night, if anything. I'll go on Uber Eats, I'll order a meal, I'll get a hot meal delivered to me in 20 minutes. Why would I want to put the extra effort in? Why would I want to put myself through a certain adversity when I don't have to? But this is exactly where we talk about, modern society has been blinded, and the men of today have been essentially, demasculinated? What's the word? Demasculated.
Emasculated?
Emasculated. My apologies. That's where the modern men of today have been emasculated, because there's no need to provide that sense of protection anymore. There's nothing that anyone's fighting for.
And we are very, very lucky that we're spoiled enough these days to be able to choose to put ourselves through a struggle. But it's not just lucky enough to choose that. I believe it's necessary.
Absolutely, it's necessary.
And when you don't do that, that's when you're very, very easily manipulated. And it's very easy to give up your power because you don't have any. Like, at the end of the day, who are the people of today? They're no one. They're soulless. They're unmotivated, undriven. And I believe that by starting with yourself, that's what building those habits, that's what builds character. That's what conditions you to be more than you think you can be. That's what pushes you past your own limiting beliefs. So, back to what I was saying earlier about training being a modern stoic practice, I believe that everything that we do in training, in bodybuilding, in any sort of physical activity, it's all about reflection. It's all about thinking. It's all about making decisions and reflecting on what you want to achieve, what you want to become. So we see this in, obviously, journaling. So you track your food, you track all your data, everything's there. You have to emotionally acknowledge your emotions, but put them to the side when you make decisions. And we see a lot of men these days are driven by emotion. That's why, and even a lot of men say, "Oh, I'm not an emotional person. I'm not." Anger is an emotion. Anger seems to be the main emotion driving men to do these atrocities. And an emotional man is a weak man because he makes decisions based off those emotions. We need to acknowledge them, move on, and make decisions based off data. So, I mean, for me, the journaling that I did in the gym, that's what got me to sort of reflect on myself. And whenever I go for my cardio, my hour walk in the morning, that's when I'm actually thinking, okay, who am I? Who do I want to become? And in that sense, I believe that's what causes the mental transformation, where you put yourself through that, you get a chance to actually reflect. I've said it before, you learn a lot about yourself at the bottom of a squat, right? Because you're burning, right? Your heart's pounding, your body's telling you to stop, but something within you says, keep going, because you have a vision in your head that says, okay, we're feeling it, we don't want to do it, but we're going to keep doing it. And that's what builds character, that's what builds resilience. So, for me, the Jacked Philosopher is someone that is a thinker. He's physically excellent, mentally strong, and a thinker. And he can reflect, and he can understand abstract concepts and discuss and learn about himself through others. Because at the end of the day, the most important thing to do is to always learn.
Correct. I think, and this is something that I've heard a lot of successful entrepreneurs speak about, like Alex Hormozy, who, by the way, you look at most successful entrepreneurs, they tend to have very stoic characteristics, very stoic qualities. They look after their bodies.
Yep.
And it's not by coincidence. It's one embodies the other. They all interlink with each other. A lot of bodybuilders, are great thinkers. I know people associate us with just being meatheads, which we're going to go into.
Oh, we definitely will.
But It's really more than that. It's beyond the physique. It's, as you said, embodying the mind of a stoic, being able to have the necessary understanding of oneself and the actualization of who you are as a person, and being able to essentially unlock that self-awareness. Because at the end of the day, your body and your mind are the only two things that you truly own, right? How you treat your body reflects how you treat your other areas of life. If you treat your body like shit, you're going to treat the people around you like shit. You're not going to apply yourself to your career, your training, whatever it may be. It all starts with the body. So that's the concepts that I want us to be able to explore in the Jacked Philosopher. And I think that's what the biggest thing that needs to be addressed in modern society is being a true master of your body, being a true master of your mind.
And we will obviously be diving pretty deep into the ideas of ancient philosophy, lessons from obviously what we've been through and from guests in future, and having real conversations. I think that's what's missing. People aren't having real conversations anymore, and that's what we need to bring up to level up ourselves both inside and out.
Absolutely. I think we have a time for a couple of questions. I did put up a poll the other day, so people asking some questions. I'll let you take the first one, Nick. So we got Steve from Muscle Talks podcast asking, is every new generational man stronger or weaker than the last?
Yeah, so this is a very interesting question, and personally, I believe it's cyclical. So what I mean by that is we have a generation of strong men, and then as time goes on, and those strong men have built foundations for the next generation, the comfort that's built by those strong men, and this isn't an original thought, this has been talked about before, but those foundations that are built by the strong men, those are what create a weaker generation because of the creature comforts, because of ease of access of things, stuff like that. So, and then those weak men that come out of that new generation, it gets worse and worse to a point where the tide starts to turn. People start having these conversations. And I think that's where we are right now, because we have a lot to thank the previous generation for, and we've taken advantage of it. It's gone too far, and I think the tide is turning. So right now we are in a weaker generation, but I believe we are going to build back better.
Well, our mission is to try to do that anyway through this podcast. So one person at a time. Question from Nicole. Women in bodybuilding. Controversy, i.e. not being feminine or being too muscly. Alrighty, look, that's an interesting one. I mean, I think it goes with any extreme sport. The idea of a feminine woman in any extreme sport is obviously going to be looked at differently. Now, as much as I respect women taking sports to the extreme, I mean, when you look at bodybuilding, what's involved in bodybuilding, right? Anabolic steroids, dieting to a very unhealthy level and whatnot. And I've got some fantastic friends, who are female bodybuilders and, give it their absolute all. But the idea of being too muscly, it depends of what you define as, a female being too muscly. Is it being too muscly in bodybuilding, or are we talking about just the actual feminine structure of a bodybuilder being too muscly in general? If we look at the traditional look of a feminine woman, then no, bodybuilding, a female bodybuilder is not that traditional look. Obviously, does not portray a traditional look. But then again, in the terms of a bodybuilding sense, there's different levels to it. So you've got the different categories. What is the sort of, tipping point where you say, okay, this female bodybuilder is now starting to look too much like a man? Again, it's arguable. I'm probably the wrong person to ask because I've been so desensitized to it, obviously been involved in the bodybuilding community. But I think when you start pushing, the boundaries of, having extremely large separated, back muscles, and you've got a V-taper that looks like a man. The chest is essentially completely gone. Like, I mean, those are very masculine characteristics. And again, obviously, I love and respect the fact that, a female wants to push herself, to get that far. I've got nothing but respect for that. But you can't call that a feminine look. Now, in terms of where that would be, that classification as a boundary, for me personally, I'd say from the wellness to the, I'd probably say from maybe the figure to the physique. Might be that. I mean, some people may say less from wellness to figure. Everyone's going to difference. If you ask a non-bodybuilder, they'll tell you bikini will look too masculine. Whereas with me, I'll look at bikini, competitors and say, no, they still look pretty feminine, more in their off season. But yeah, I think for me personally, that boundary would be when you cross over into the, the size game that women play when you get to the physique levels. Then yeah, you're pretty much crossing that boundary. Yeah. One more question we've got certified grafter. So Rick, how do you deal with friends throwing shade at you when you started posting content?
So can I answer this?
Yeah, of course.
So personally, this is where the mindset kind of comes in, and this is where being stoic comes in. I have stopped caring what external people that aren't involved in my life think about me. And it is the most liberating thing ever. When you see a comment that's, purposefully written to sort of cause you distress I feel sorry for them. When you get a hate comment, I feel sorry for the person commenting because I don't have time to sit there commenting on other people's posts.
Yep.
Right? So imagine what their life looks like if they stop scrolling, watch your content, and then click into the comments, type the comment, read it, and then press send. To me, it's like, okay, obviously your life isn't going the way you want it to. Something's wrong, and I feel sorry for you. And I'm happy to help you. I genuinely feel bad for them. So I don't care what they think of me. I feel bad for them. Do you have anything to add to that, or are you along the same lines?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm probably a bit more extreme than you are in terms of, how pathetic is that person to, to sit there commenting something like that. It's like, because honestly, like for me, I call them, keyboard warriors. That's the common term for them. It's like anything that you wouldn't say to my face, and 99% of those people would not say that to your face. It's like, okay, cool. It shows who you are as a person, bro. Yeah. It's like, well done. Anyone can jump on and look, as someone that creates content, as someone who provides advice and education, especially from an authoritarian perspective, which, we like to portray ourselves as coaches, not authoritarian, but a place of with authority, with good reason, right? Yeah. A place of education, a place of where, we are trying to teach people things. You are going to get people that disagree with you, and that's absolutely fine. I have no issues. I'm more than happy for people to disagree with me on certain things. When we talk about training philosophies, when we talk about, foods, different diets, whatever, that's absolutely fine. But when it gets to the point where you personally attack someone, whether it's, because of a certain way that they structured their reel, or a mistake that they made, or a type of food that they're eating, or something that they genuinely believe that they wish to preach about on social media just because it's their belief and their perspective, and you shit on them for that, you're a dickhead.
Yeah, you are.
Straight out.
Yeah.
That's
essentially what I was saying. Where
exactly.
It's like, imagine what their life is like.
Exactly.
It can't be great.
And yes, I do agree with you. I do feel sorry for them because I think that they have issues going on a deeper level than they'd like to acknowledge. Because I see plenty of things on social media on a daily basis that I heavily disagree with, yet I'm not going to sit there commenting on them, wasting my time, thinking I'm going to take 2 minutes out of my day to purposely attack someone else because of...
Well, you're busy running your own race.
Well, exactly, that's right. And that's what I think everyone should be doing.
Exactly.
But yeah, to answer that question, I've learnt, and again, it's not something that you learn straight away. Like, I saw my first negative comment a while ago, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, yeah, that hurt. And it wasn't easy to accept. But when you realise, you know what, I'm doing this for myself. I know that I'm helping people. I know that I'm providing good value here. It doesn't matter what people think. And I think that's the most important thing, the lesson that you can learn in life. So, well, thank you for joining us for the first episode of The Jacked Philosopher. We hope that you genuinely enjoyed this episode. We have got plenty more conversations to come. And as always, guys, make sure you do show us the love in the comments. Any topics that you want to talk about, make sure you drop us a follow, drop us a like, subscribe. We will be releasing this on all platforms, and we will see you for the next one. Hopefully you got something out of it.